So I would like to welcome my friend and keynote speaker, Levi Brown. Levi is a Anishinaabe and also a citizen of the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe. Professionally, he has spent 16 years working for the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe in the capacity ranging from the Leech Lake Civics instructor, government to government lead negotiator, environmental land director, where he also represented the 35 tribal nations of EPA Region 5, serving as the National Tribal Operations Committee representative, advocating for tribal sovereignty, tribal ecological knowledge, and environmental authority for tribal nations. Thank you for that time. Maybe we appreciate it. Currently, Mr. Brown is employed by the state of Minnesota and has been for the past 5 years as the MnDOT Director for Tribal Affairs, managing the 11% of state transportation infrastructure that resides within Indian country. He also has the honor of overseeing the highly successful Tribal State Relationship Training, which is focused on collaboration and understanding. In 2021, he was honored with the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development 40 Under 40 Award for his work with tribal nations. It's pretty good. He is a lifelong resident of the Leech Lake Indian Reservation, recently finished his second term as the chairman for, I'm so sorry, I'm going to need some help, Nupamine Local Indian Council. He sits on several area advisory, including the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe Natural Resource Advisory Committee, Wild Rice Committee, and his proudest accolade is that he's the father of 4 children, Gavin, Jack, Winnie, and Aspen. Thank you, Levi.
So you probably saw me laugh and giggle when they go to the accolades part, because I'm no longer under 40. Now 40 years old, so I thought about that. That's probably a thing I need to take out of there. And the other one I want to add in there, and Chairman mentioned it, is I'm top shooter on Leech Lake. For those of you who deer hunt, you know what that means, but yeah, one of the best, one of the greatest, living legend. No. All seriousness, I want to thank Keith Carnes, my friend, over the time. Maybe a round of applause for Keith. And like Tony had mentioned, the Timber Council and what that means and what bringing everybody together, bringing new ideas. At the end of the day, bringing people together, people to be able to share their knowledge, their wisdom, and how they see the world. And that's what I'm going to talk a lot about today, is the aspects of how we see the world, the transitions that go through a lifetime, the wisdom you gain over that lifetime. But I want to thank the council for bringing it together. You might wonder who's this wonderful shooter, great harvester. Just so you know, I'm not BSing. In my vows to my wife, I put in there that I would provide all the weos and fish you could need for a lifetime. I've actually put that in my vows, and I have not missed yet. Just kidding, Chairman. I missed a couple times last year, but he's going to keep me on this fact check. But about who I am and where I come from and the place I come from. I've lived here my whole life, all 40 years of my life, besides the time I left the school. And over that time, my vantage point and my worldview has changed tremendously about how I view the world and what does the world mean to me. And so, being an Anishinaabe, our view and our worldview, that matters. It matters how we present ourselves during the day. It matters how we live our lives, how we raise our children, how we do our job, right? And so, when I'm up here having this discussion, I want to tell you who I am and where I come from, because it'll provide context for the end, where I give you all the tools to solve all your problems. So, I hope it helps you, but at the end of the day, living here on Leech Lake, growing up in a place where I think it was, ironic that somebody said we run into a drought. We had a drought last year. here in Leech Lake, our home here, had a big drought. But Leech Lake has 408 lakes, 377,000 acres of wetland and surface water. 10% of the water in the state of Minnesota is on Leech Lake at any given moment. 4 of the top 12 largest lakes in Minnesota are right here on Leech Lake. The headwaters of the Mississippi is right here near Leech Lake. When you think about water is life, or life is water, I always tell our young people, and those who take our civics course, that we have a tremendous amount of life here, the ability to be who we are. And that water, you think back to during the treaties and things that shaped the history of this place here. Why did our ancestors want to stay here? Right? What was the point? Right? Because most times I'm sure the U.S. government a long time ago saw a bunch of swamps and some lakes, some pothole lakes. But again, that connection to the land, to that landscape that you're all talking about today is the theme of this symposium. And so when I think about our home here, how big it is, it's larger than the state of Rhode Island. Some of you may come from large reservations, some may come from small. But I've only known a large reservation. I've only known to be able to hunt and fish, so free on a place larger than the state of Rhode Island. And so, the chairman talks about us being spread out in villages all over. The village I'm from, Newpeming, the north end of the reservation, is roughly about 45 minutes from here. So when I come down to help the chairman and his family, bring my family down, it's a 45-minute drive for us. We might think that that's a tough way of being, or that's, a hurdle to get over. I think that's something we should celebrate here at our home, that you're all getting to share and you're experiencing now. And I look at that as a sense of being fortunate, of how much we have and how much we should be thankful for. So when you fast forward through time, I know I saw some of my colleagues, my friends here from the National Forest. Chippewa National Forest shares a common border of our home here at Leech Lake. And one of the things I often remind folks is that responsibility, that overlap of where we come from here, we share that with the National Forest now. We hunt all over, whether it's National Forest lands, tribal lands, doesn't matter. We're hunting on all those lands. So that relationship where, the synergy between us must be high now. When I think about my life here growing up, spending time in the woods, I was raised by my grandfather, and the first thing he taught me was about being thankful for that good life. And I never understood what it was, but I shared a little bit about what that good life is. All that water, all that area to hunt, all that area to pick berries, to have a sugar bush. That's the good life, that Vino Bimadazi win, a good life, right? Live in a good way. And the chairman touched on that, and I think that's the theme we share here, that we're very fortunate that we have, and some of you probably have on your homelands, or those of you who work for whether state or federal government, who have a responsibility, who maybe are impacting, those tribal members who are trying to live that good life. And how those landscapes we all have, that we all enjoy, that good life is directly tied to those. And when I say good life, I'm not talking about this is just an Anishinaabe or this is a tribal thing. It's a human, something we can all agree on, whether you're tribal or not. We can all agree. And if you ask everybody in this room, do you want a good life? Yeah. You want a good life for your kids? Yeah. And I think often when we have that conversation, we forget about what we're actually talking about. And when I was reading the agenda here, looking at the landscapes, the trees and the forests, I go back to something I learned, as my time, like I said, as I got older, about what we're really talking about how you can stand on a beautiful sunset, maybe over a river, or out in the woods, and hear birds, chirping, making noise. You can see otters playing, whatever that might be. But the power that you have in that moment, the power that landscape, our Mother Earth has. And what I mean by power is, you ever have a really bad day, and then you go see something wonderful, or you touch something wonderful in the natural world? I see some of you nodding because I know you all know that power, you touched it. And as Indian people, that is something power for eons we have understood and we have lived with. And we teach that to our children. And it's that power that heals us. It's that power that can turn a bad day into a smile. And to be thankful for what we have standing and looking over 408 lakes. Being able to net our fish 11 months out of the year. Angle all year long. Not many places in this world you can still do that. So when I think about being a human, I hope we all stop and pause and think about where that good life is for us, what it means to us, or in some cases, how your job might affect that life. And I promise you I would talk not only about myself, getting to a little bit, I'm going to get off of here in a second, but what I really want folks to understand and to take a look at is that everybody here represents a different thing. I wear like 8 caps. You can hear the things they listed through there. But one thing I've learned, and I'm going to share it at the end of this, is about how human beings get choices through life, choices through time, choices through authority, where you have that authority, where you don't have that authority. But how you get a choice through all of it. And it does impact every aspect of your life, other people's lives, especially in the work you're all doing. I think it was pretty remarkable the chairman mentioned a lot of the things that I was going to talk about how we as Indian people enjoy the natural world, and how sometimes decisions we all make impact that natural world, impact that good life, the ability to heal ourselves and to feel power. And so, being here, growing up on Leech Lake, I'm part of that fortunate generation that, and I say fortunate, and I say it because I think it keeps me humble, keeps a perspective on where the world is at. I was born in 1983, so it means that part of my first 10 years of life were pre-gaming. Those of you who grew up on the res pre-gaming know what that life was like, right? The USDA cans, the pork symbol, right? Oh, come on, nobody else here got commods? Well, I got commods, all right? And for those of you guys, it was the white cereal box. You hoped you had Kaboom, but if you had big siblings, you weren't getting any. You were just getting the regular cornflakes. Okay, see, some of you have had it now. I get it. That was pre-game. That was the life we had here. Butter and sugar sandwiches from grandma. That was a highlight. Now look at where we sit. The facilities that we have here, the ability for our leaders to create opportunities for our people. And so, why I tell that part of the story is because it wasn't always that way here. We never had the opportunities that we have. And so, when you're a young person growing up here on the reservation, you get a bit of a chip on your shoulder. My worldview of non-tribal members was much different. It probably derived from the fact that, I was eating commods, right? And how I saw the world, how I saw my opportunities. And so when we look as a young person, when I look at my life, and I have asked others to look at it the same way, after gaming, the opportunities came about. And I left the college. And when I went to school, my world started to change just a little bit because my Leech Lake paid for my schooling. That's what these facilities do. They gave us an opportunity, a chance. And no, I didn't go for biology, ecology, natural resources. That was not my area. But I was born in the woods. My teachings were on the water. I was a political scientist, believe it or not. And so, after school, moving home and these opportunities were here, first thing they offered me was a position. They offered me a position as environmental land director for Leech Lake. And I didn't know what that meant. Because I just had that chip on my shoulder still. I saw the world much different than I see it today. And so, when I went to my first ever meeting with our partner, the Chippewa National Forest, we sat down in a room, small room, some of you may be from Forest Service, I've sat in that same room. I call it the room of death. Just kidding, no. Remember you see Ace Ventura and there's all the stuffed animals on the wall? And he said, oh, look at this wonderful room of death. Well, at Leech Lake, we have a room like that's full of stuff there. Well, there is humor. For those of you who actually see that movie, enjoy commodities in those movies. But what I'm getting at, sitting in this room, and across the table from me is non-tribal members representing another government. And I'm a Leech Laker who remembers what it was to not have anything. But now I have a voice. I'm sitting at this table. I have a responsibility to my people, to my forest, to those who look after, and I have to make sure that I make good decisions or give good advice that doesn't affect that good life. That responsibility to protect those four legs, to make good decisions. And so I'm sitting there, and it was about a project north of here, up where I live, in Pennington, our Newbie, our village. And it was the Black Duck District Ranger. The conversation started out pretty normal, but I noticed there was nothing about us in that conversation. There wasn't one bit about it. This time reference is probably 2008. Sitting in this meeting, and they were just talking about logging. All logging. And my grandma and my aunts would always tell me about how they couldn't find the plants they used to pick because they'd always cut the areas that they were at. So I said, I better say something. I said something about it. And the man across the table, who was the district ranger, I mean, you would have thought I spit in his water or I spit on his meal. What do you mean we're not looking after you? We're not doing what we should be doing for you? And I swear at that moment, that chip on my shoulder came full froth. Because then I said to him, I said, you see me driving a bulldozer and a chainsaw and running through the church down the road down there? And I think I thought insulted him, and he insulted me, and we literally had to be separated. That's where we're at. I was 23 years old, full of fire, full of a little bit of life, I guess, at that moment. And we went in separate directions at that point. But I tell you, why I tell that story the way it is because after that, then I started realizing where our relationships were with our partners. And you might wonder why I keep calling our partners if I almost got in a scrap with them, right? It's because, and just so you all know, if I said scrap, it's probably a fight. So we're not, okay? But why? Why would I call them partners? Is because as human beings, one of the first things that we're taught is we all share this world. We're all part of it. We don't live outside of each other. We don't live outside of this world. Whether you're the fish swimming in the stream, the mushroom growing in the woods, or federal and tribal employee, in the room of death, we all share and inhabit the same world. And so that's something that is always stuck. But sometimes when you're young, we forget about those teachings. And you look past them and you end up in an argument. And so when I look at what we're talking about, how things go now with our partners, I really have to stop and assess where we were at. And part of it fell back upon myself, the tribe. Because we hadn't done a good job of talking about what rights we had, where our history was, teaching ourselves about tribal sovereignty, our treaty rights and what they belong. Which, how could I expect the person sitting across the table from me to understand what I was talking about? To fully grasp, because he'd never been taught it, he'd never seen it before. And so we ran into each other when maybe we couldn't have, we would have just paused and maybe talked to each other about how we saw the world and why we saw it that way. And so, and I hope you don't, those national forest people, I hope you don't take it as I'm bashing you at all. But context matters in this conversation. And one of the other things that we had to deal with at that time was, did you know on this reservation, if you were a tribal member, you could only cut dead and down trees? Anybody remember that policy? Now, some people are. Now, I tell that to young kids now, and they're like, what? We can go touch whatever we want. It wasn't always that way. There was tickets issued to DRM employees for getting a Christmas tree. There was a ticket written to our chief of police for hunting behind a closed gate. These are all real events that happened in my time working for DRM. And we have to deal with them. But why I let off the conversation is we have to deal with them, but we learn from them. Through our time, and as we increase our knowledge. Ever notice how high the eagles soar? How much of the world they can see? They can see what's going on in Walker. They can see what's going on in Hackensack. See all these areas. And that's what I'm talking about, is the wisdom that we have. The more experiences we have, the better vantage point we get. And so, even though these were conflicts, the state of Minnesota doesn't know I'm talking right now. Stop calling. It doesn't say, our place are like, Levi just ignored somebody. I did. I'm not gonna lie. What I'm getting at, though, is that these issues we had, when you fast forward through time, and what does it mean for today, and you're all in the conversation here, is where's my friend Ben Benoit? Is Ben in here? I hope Michael, his supervisor, is going to give him flack for not being in here. Because I'm about to give him a shout out, he should have been in here. But the point I'm getting at is Ben Benoit was my predecessor at the environmental department after I left. And now he works as the Deer River District Ranger. He's a tribal member. So look at that window. Yeah, sit around that. And so, we're in the restroom, Ben. It's Ben in the background. Let's give him another round of applause. And so, when you think about that, that happened in the scope of maybe 15 years. That's changed. That is something that you learn from. And pretty soon, that's why I call them partners, right? People have to learn to do something before they can do it. They have to know why. And so, when you think about Ben succession, MOUs, memorandum of understanding between our two governments, so we understand where each other are coming from. Trainings between our two governments, teaching about why and how we see the world. Those are all things that help set the stage and a higher vantage point for the future generations. For the chairman talked about how we make our decisions. And that's what I understood. I understood right away that I was just a snapshot in time. It was my job to lay a strong foundation for each step up that ladder. So pretty soon our young people will be with eagles. They'll be able to see everything. They'll know everything. Maybe not know everything, rephrase that. But they'll have the ability to. Nothing will be out of their reach. And so when I look about, as human beings, I mentioned that to you all before, about how important that was. I've given you all the conflict you can have, right? As a young person, I'm 40, I probably look like 50 something, right? A lot of gray hair up here. But there is a shining light on the backside of that, right? There's a story of Ben, the story of the conversations that are happening between our offices, our two governments. And what does that teach me, and why do I think it's important to share with you all? Because it's just human beings. It truly is. It's two people or groups of people being able to talk and make decisions that are in the best interest of other people. And you might say, well, Levi, that sounds kind of fortune cookie. Well, it kind of is. Anybody get a fortune cookie and go, oh my God, it says I'm lucky today. I went and bought a lottery ticket? Come on now, a couple of you out there have done that. Why I say that part is because we all believe in it. We all believe tomorrow can be better. And I've witnessed that happen. Because guess what? I saw a man raise his hand over there. Do you have to wait to get dead down trees? Or can you just go cut what you need? No, I just said you cut what you need. That has changed. My neighbor, Ken Washington, he goes out in the woods, he's chief of police. Guess what? Him and his son are probably not going to get a ticket for hunting out in the woods now. Things change. You have to provide that opportunity for those seeds to grow, those seeds to change. And so all today, they're talking about landscape, forests, and trees. It's very important to do those things. But if you leave this symposium with anything, and I hope you take this with you, is that it's the human beings in that room that can really make a difference. And whether listening or talking or whatever that might be, but that time you spend engaging with those other human beings can benefit somebody down the road. Maybe not, it won't seem like it's instantaneous, I feel like it takes 15 years. Or in some cases with Keith Carnes, him and I, believe it or not, did not always see eye to eye. But we would sit in his office for hours after work smoking, and I would teach him about what it was to be a Leech Laker and what it was to grow up in this town. And he's a farmer from southern Minnesota. Now I consider him my niece, my friend, because he took the time to learn about me, and I took the time to learn about how you can hunt with shotguns south of Highway 10. I thought, that's kind of dumb, but I guess if you guys want to take the time to go do that, right? They call them gut shot Carnes down there, so they call them. I got the big Mikey. The point I'm getting at, now I'm not in with this, because I do have to go, and I want to end with this. A lot of times, there are systems, dividers, boxes, we put people in, we put plants in, we put soils in, we put trees in them, we put whatever box we want to put around things. But that's not how the world worked, the natural world. And so sometimes as human beings, we get in these boxes and we sit in them. We say, well, you're over there, I'm here. The box, the line, the imaginary line, the box between us is not going to allow us to have that conversation. But whether you're a forest supervisor, a tribal forester, a tribal member, a chairman, a senator, whatever that is, that box of your mind that you put there, you put that box in your decision-making authority. You allow it to limit your ability to make change. And if we don't change the way we think, nothing in this world will change. If we continue to make the same decisions that led to the bad things we've done, we use that same thinking, nothing will change. So I ask that we take down these boxes, these silos we put ourselves in as human beings, and we just have conversations, we just engage. Because what I learned back to that conversation with that district ranger from Blackfoot was, we both were in boxes. We were in these boxes, and it was the systems between us that we allowed, whether it was the federal system or the tribal system, whatever it was the systems between us that divided us. And nothing in the forest, or nothing in the landscapes you all are working on doesn't live that way. We can learn a lot from that natural world by just watching it. I remember the first time Keith sent me a picture of some trees that were growing in soils they shouldn't have been growing in. He's like, oh my God, look at these 4 trees growing in this area. How are they growing in this soil? They shouldn't be here. That's life, Keith. It's worldview. We don't know. You know? We don't know that someday I hope I meet this forest ranger again, and I get to apologize to him for being so rude to him. Because I should have taken the time to explain to him how I saw the world. Because when you can do that, whether it's with your coworkers or your governmental partners, sometimes taking the time to listen, explain how you see the world, can make the change we all want. So with that, be good and have a good symposium. Thank you.